this bloke from across the pond reaches out and contacts you and says, "Hey, fellas, I was wondering if you might fancy a addition to your show. I'm looking to increase my brand and increase my content that I get out there." And that would be the textbook definition of a swerve, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But before we get into it, I am the intellectual savior of the wrestling masses, Brian. I am joined tonight in a rarity, actually, just by the funniest man in the room, Katie Hinken from across the pond in Birmingham. How goes it this evening for you, sir?
It goes very well. I've had a good nap, like I was saying a second ago. To me, it feels like the morning right now, despite the fact it's, well, I mean, it is the morning. It's 3:30 in the morning, but it feels like, 10 a.m. I'm fresh. I'm feeling good. I got
we're gonna run with this. Take this ball and run with it. We're gonna get into that meaty content. Thank you as always to all of you out there for however you choose to consume our show, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on any of our myriad podcast platforms, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Apple, and the like. We appreciate the support and all of that. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we're talking about the Swerve today, and diehard wrestling fans understand what we're talking about, but for those casual observers who are along for the ride, a swerve is a story element that you didn't see coming. Spoiler alert, like at the end of The Sixth Sense when you learn that Bruce Willis was dead the whole time.
It is the M. Night Shyamalan of WWE, that kind of stuff. That's
a swerve. And as ever, things tend to come back, all things come back to the bloodline right now. We saw another quote-unquote swerve happen at SummerSlam with Jimmy Uso costing his brother, Jay, the opportunity to become de facto head of the table, I guess, and undisputed champion by beating Roman Reigns.
WWE undisputed tribal champion of the island of Paul Heyman.
Yes. So that's what we're talking about tonight. And it's going to be a discussion of kind of the best swerves that we've seen in our time as wrestling fans, and an examination of the question, is it really possible to swerve anybody anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Or have we reached the point of diminishing returns with this, where you got to work really, really hard and push all of these boundaries in the envelope so much that, and you don't really know what kind of a return on investment you're getting. So, Katie, I'll throw it over to you, so it's not just a whole episode of me,
but
waxing poetic.
We like your waxing poetic, though. We love to hear it. It's like soothing. It's like putting on campfire noises with like thunderstorms going on in the back and the rain's coming down on a tent. Which, if you ever did in real life, had a fireplace in the tent, it would be horrific. So. If you
need some waxing poetic to make it go down easy, wouldn't you?
Exactly, yeah, exactly. That was my point I was originally making. Thank you for helping me there.
You're welcome. But in any event, I'll throw it over to you, Katie. Whether you want to talk about the swerve in general and what purpose you think it serves for wrestling in general, or if you want to talk about a particular moment in history that in a storyline that you would consider a swerve.
Do a brief bit on both. Like, as far as like what a swerve is to me, I think I completely agree with you, to be honest. Like the only difference between a swerve in wrestling and like a swerve at the end of a film is that wrestling never ends in it. So the swerve is always, in a sense, in the middle, because there's no real ending to things. Mm-hmm. And very rarely does a swerve fully end a storyline, or without starting another one anyway. But that's kind of what it is a lot of the time, and it's like a tool to transition people from one feud to another, or the idea of, because you bring up a really good point about whether you could shock people nowadays still. I think you can, personally. I don't know if you want to mention this now. Do you want me to leave this till the end?
Oh, you can. We're free flowing tonight. We don't have an outline. We don't have really, we have just the cocktail napkin with the idea written on it in, the red pen that I borrowed from the waitress kind of thing.
I like that. That's how I perform best, when I'm just winging it, not having to remember anything, because I can't, because this beautiful brain is a creative juggernaut, but it cannot remember anything. It's filled with holes. Much like the
of
waitresses you were just talking about. Sorry, I don't know why. 7 holes a human being has. Random fact for you.
Okay.
But the swerve of nowadays, the only way you can shock people has to have holes in it too, I think, in a way, because it's more about annoying people, swerves nowadays, I think, which that's the only way to really shock people in wrestling, I think, because I say that in the sense that it's more of a byproduct of it, because a lot of the swerves they do nowadays, if you think about them for too long, they don't really make that much sense. But
yeah, suspension of disbelief has always been something you have to bring to the table
is that you really
as a
do,
wrestling fan.
yeah. It's the same with the films and stuff, like we do it all the time. We choose to just kind of go along with things.
I mean, I feel like this is the point of the show where I should bring up. I'm contractually obligated to bring up Finn Balor once a show. I mean, when he used to put the paint on, there's suspension of disbelief with that.
True.
You know, he's not actually a demon from under the ring or in the bowels of the arena or anything like that, but it still looked cool. You know, my favorite iteration actually was the takeover that was in London where he was Jack the Ripper.
That was a very cool one.
I mean, the visuals and stuff like that, the screaming in the background and stuff like that. I mean,
the issue was with that when I watched that, I was showing somebody that had never seen him before how cool the entrance was and the demon and that. And like the Jack the Ripper one was really cool, but it wasn't the normal one. It didn't have all his normal motions. He was holding a chainsaw, I think.
It just
seemed very random.
Right for that one.
Yeah.
He's had. I mean, the NXT versions of that have. I mean, you could do a highlight reel of just those.
Mm-hmm.
But is there a particular swerve that you want to start the discussion off with? Because I have one in mind where I was truly like, oh, geez, I never saw that coming.
Well, do you want to do, because I've got them noted down as the ones that were the best swerves in history, and then like the worst ones. So shall we do like a good one each, and then like go to a bad one each or something?
Sure. I mean, I would consider this a good one simply because I never thought these two guys would work together on the same show ever.
Okay.
Because of the history that they share. But the night when Vince McMahon brought Eric Bischoff out to be the GM of Raw in 2002 or 2003 or whatever that was, maybe it was.
Yeah.
That's probably where you would start with swerves. Because those two men were in direct competition with each other. They were both trying to put the other out of business. And, Bischoff was trying to put McMahon out of business.
Yeah. Vince McMahon, I don't think ever really was trying to do that much apart from at the end.
He never really had to.
Yeah.
But in terms of the moment itself, I don't know that much good came out of Bischoff being the GM of Raw.
Him being involved in WWE, though, I think, because that's just essentially him being involved in WWE at all. And I think there's been benefits to that. Not like a huge amount, probably more personally for him.
Yeah.
And I think only if there haven't been that many benefits, I think that's only because WWE didn't use him in the right way. Because he got a good mind for it all,
But in terms of, the moment itself and the anticipation that Vince built, because that's one of the things he was really good at.
And they were teasing somebody else as well, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Which is a great thing to do in a swerve, obviously.
Yeah. So for me, that's where the discussion starts. It's got to be something you truly never saw coming, because who on their right mind would think that these two could be on the same, in this, working for the same company and on the flagship show, as it's always said.
Yeah.
That Monday Night Raw is. I could have done without seeing his, karate, in main events all the time, but it's still a swerve, I think, because who in the right mind could have seen it coming?
Yeah. And I was like, when it comes to main events with like like the non-wrestlers and stuff, I'm not gonna lie, I've always been, like I said, I'm more story driven when it comes to wrestling. Hence why I'm not as into AEW as other people. But I love that kind of stuff, like when you have the manager at the end. So just for that kind of stuff alone, it was a good swerve, I'd say, that they got to that, you know. Do you want me to give you what I think is my favorite, like what I think is the best swerve in WWE?
Sure, let's go.
Okay, you'll like this one. The retirement swerve of Mark Henry.
I would call that a swerve.
Yeah, that was like his amazing acting was just got that over completely.
And the lead up to it, because he was not wrestling for a long time. He was he wasn't on TV. He wasn't around for a while. He wasn't making appearances, and you legitimately wonder, okay, where has he been?
And this was like pre Hall of Pain as well. This was kind of the genesis for the Hall of Pain. This stuff. So they kind of realized in that moment, it's like, oh, it's somehow we haven't noticed this for like 15 years at the time, but he got some chops on him on the mic.
Yeah. That is, to me, one of the best swerves there's ever been, because it looked for all the world like we were watching a legitimate retirement speech.
Yeah.
And for one of his biggest rivals and Cena to come out.
Yeah,
because Cena and Henry had some
little
fights,
bits,
stuff
but
like that.
I mean, Mark Henry wasn't even like main event level though at that point. Well, he always was main event level, but he wasn't used main event level.
Right. So that, I mean, you have all the elements of a great swerve. You have a guy who's on the tail end of a career. You haven't seen him on TV for a long time. He comes out in a great looking suit, the salmon colored jacket, and all that.
That was part of it, man. The psychology behind that, like the pink stuff, it makes you feel like they seem like it's like the whole idea of they don't feel like a threat.
Right.
So it kind of set it all up visually, I like all the little things, and obviously just the pure acting ability of him. Because as much as they'd set it up little bits, but that one as well, compared to a lot of the others on like the lists and stuff, I think was not really built up over weeks like before. This was like a one segment kind of mainly build up in a way, and it went over like it did because of how he acted it.
Something or listening to an interview that he gave where he didn't even tell his family.
Oh wow.
That this was going to be the angle that they were going to go with. They just, he just kind of, let what you need to know kind of thing. And I'm not going to tell you all of it. So like, I remember him saying, is either he said like, my kids were at home and they were like, really, you're retiring, that kind of thing, shocker to us. My wife was, same thing. So yeah, I think we've started off with two bangers of a swerve, because that was when, as you said, Mark Henry kind of enjoyed that career renaissance to where people remembered like how much of a threat he actually could be.
Went on to win his first world titles and stuff,
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
And then, of course, on Wrestling with Egos, we have to take the sour with the sweet. We have to take the bitter with the with the with the good.
The yin with the yang.
And all of that. Can you give us an example of a swerve that did not go off as intended?
I can give you one if you want one. Okay, here's a perfect one straight away. This is probably the one that pops to my head straight away when I think of worst swerves ever. Attitude Era. I did it for The Rock. I did it for The Rock. Rikishi being unveiled as the man who run over Stone Cold. Which even the fact that I was young when I was watching that, and it was very hard for me to not like stuff or like get annoyed by things. But still to this point, today, like I always have that suspension of disbelief, so I find it quite easy, to just go along with wrestling. I don't expect like nuanced, full-on stories all the time, which is why Bloodline's been so nice. But well, yeah.
Yeah, that whole storyline, that whole thing was very convoluted. In fact,
sorry,
it might sound like I'm contractually obligated to bring this guy up every week. I'm really not. I just like his stuff. Adam Blampier has a series on his old channel when he used to be on What Culture, and on his Parts Unknown channel now.
Yeah.
Called How Adam Would Book.
Oh, of course,
where he goes back in time and fantasy books, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while he'll do present day stuff, like he's got stuff about how Cody Rhodes should finish the story and blah blah blah.
Yeah, Roman as well,
but
I think.
There's a 2-parter from back in the day about Austin being hit by a car. And in it, you know, the first part, he kind of talks about how ludicrous the whole angle was. You know,
yeah.
What does Rikishi have to gain from this? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, yeah, they're blood, but that's about it. And the way he reimagines it, it's Kurt Angle that did the, you know,
yeah.
That would, sort of thing. You know,
that could work.
Did the, you know, and you know, if you really want to go get the deets, you should go watch it, because I don't remember all the ins and outs of it. But as constructed, that storyline didn't make any sense, because we had Rikishi for a couple of months trying to be a heel.
Yeah.
When in reality it was Triple H was the mastermind the whole time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was another Swerve too, because that wasn't the idea when Rikishi was announced as it. Do you know what I mean?
Right. They saw how badly it was going, and like, okay, we got to get some juice back on this. And
yeah. We got to pivot. That's my.
In fact, that whole thing gave us one of my least favorite Rock matches. The Survivor Series match that he had with Rikishi is one of my least favorite matches I've ever seen The Rock wrestle.
I don't even remember that. Like, I remember it led up to Rikishi being involved in the Armageddon.
Yes, where he got chokeslammed off the, or basically just kind of pushed off the.
yeah, I was gonna say chokeslammed, yeah.
into the back of the truck.
I don't blame him though. It's like, you make sure you're falling in the right place if you just fall back. So yeah, do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, give us a bad one then, boy.
I'm trying to think of some more recent ones that have just not
landed.
It's really easy to pick all the stuff they were doing during the pandemic, because, you know, I feel like, you know, that was a time where we're just throwing everything we can at the wall and seeing what sticks.
I'll give him a pass for that personally, for like you said, because of that. I mean, I've got plenty. If you want another one, I got like more recent bad ones.
Would you consider character changes swerves?
Depends on the character
like
change.
When Apollo Crews comes out and starts talking with a Nigerian accent and has, you know, I mean, I guess that's not really. We could be here all night talking about heel and face turns as swerves. Now,
yeah, exactly.
Speaking of that, I will bring up one that I will always have a personal affinity for. Because I had talked at the top about how I'm contractually obligated to mention Finn Balor in every show.
You did, and
I'm also contractually obligated to mention Bayley every show.
Yeah, I have seen that paperwork.
It's
connected to the restraining order that she has.
Her heel turn. Back in the fall of 2019, where she came out to wrestle Charlotte, I want to say for the championship, for whether it was SmackDown or Raw, or I think it was the SmackDown. I think it was the debut episode of SmackDown on Fox.
Okay.
As I recall, or one of the first episodes of SmackDown when it went live on Fox. She came out to her usual chipper music, and she had the inflatable tube guys.
Yeah, you're right. It was Fox. I remember, because there was those things on the entranceway.
But then they come back to her at the entrance, and she's not doing her normal stuff. She's got a hoodie on, covering up most of her face.
Yeah.
And, you know, Charlotte's like, okay, come on, let's go. And she takes the hoodie off, and you see she's got a new haircut. She's got like a little bob deal, and it's all like black. And she goes and picks up a hatchet.
Yeah.
And just starts ripping the two men to shreds.
See, I'd say the act of actually ripping them up is what the actual swerve is there, rather than a heel turn.
And The payoff was, there was a couple payoffs. Charlotte's reaction to it. Because they would cut back to Charlotte standing in the ring, and she kind of like cocked her head to one side, like, "What am I watching?"
Yeah. Charlotte's good like that.
It's not just you can't just be. It's like Triple H said when, Mick Foley ripped off the Mankind mask and turned into Cactus Jack. All they would have had to do was smirk.
Yeah.
And then it's over. But because I sold it the way I did, that lent some legitimacy to it. The same thing with Charlotte. All Charlotte would have had to do was like, yeah, okay. But she realized this is not happy-go-lucky Bayley anymore. And then after the match was over, she got on the mic and said, "Screw all of you," or "Screw you," "Screw all of you people," or something like that, and just dropped the mic and left with the championship. And I thought, okay, that was something we didn't see coming, because it was executed on all aspects.
That'd be an interesting show.
That's one of the big examples I come up with where a turn of some kind is actually a swerve.
Yeah. It's because I would say, like I said, the action of the actual ripping the inflatable arm things or the tube things, whatever they were. Yeah, that's definitely the swerve. We could do an episode at some point on like some of the best and worst heel turns and face turns, because there's got to be so many. You could do like multiple shows on that. Do you want to know what?
I think we'll touch on the bloodline here for a minute if you don't mind. I think we're at the point of critical mass with this storyline. Because I was, I forget when I was thinking about this. It might have been earlier in the week when I was coming home from work or something like that. But I was thinking about, like, you've got a Rubik's Cube, which I've never been able to solve in my life. I've had a couple, never been able to complete one at all. I'm the idiot that used to peel the stickers off and move them around and say, "Hey, I did it,"
That's cleverness right there, though.
But it's like you feel like you're really close to solving a Rubik's Cube, and you make one wrong turn, and then the tan and the pink and the yellow don't line up anymore, and now you got to go retrace your steps. I feel like that's where we're at with Bloodline. Because there's only so many moving parts anymore. Now that Zayn's kind of out of the picture, and Jimmy and Jay have taken turns being hurt and things like that. I didn't know Logan Paul was underwriting the show.
Oh yeah, well he can.
For our podcast listeners, KD just uncapped a Prime energy drink. And he's recoiling in horror after taking a swig.
Oh my god! It tastes like I don't know what you'd call them over there, like tip tops that have melted, like the ice. It's like melted and it's like left over and it's been poured into a bottle. That's really weird.
Drinking the dregs is never good. But
I
feel like I feel like with the Bloodline, it's getting to the point now of swerves for the sake of swerves.
Yeah.
Because they have all this calendar time to fill before we get to WrestleMania 40.
Yeah.
And whatever is going to happen, is it going to be Cody dethroning him? Is it going to be Jay dethroning him? Is it going to be Solo dethroning? We have no idea.
I think the Usos are done now, like in being particularly involved in that with Roman. I think they're going to be held up until Mania to have their match. Maybe they'll have one match and then they'll set up another match with that one match, by maybe Jimmy injuring Jay for a bit or something for a couple of months. Get around it like that.
You could do a couple straight up match, like one straight up match at Survivor Series, then up the ante at Royal Rumble, and then do like a Hell in a Cell at Mania.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since we've had a Hell in a Cell at Mania, but if you're going to do one, Jimmy and Jay in a cell makes sense.
I think we had one semi-recently, didn't we, I think?
Oh, wait a minute.
Wasn't Edge and Finn Balor?
Edge and Finn this year. I completely forgot.
Yeah.
That one kind of disappointed me, but...
Yeah. Looking at this, keeping on the same kind of wavelength that we're on there now, like one for me that I would consider a bad modern swerve that didn't go well, and arguably Cody Rhodes not winning the WWE title at Mania. Like, everybody was sure he was going to do it. The story made sense for it, That's kind of what I was saying, because at the beginning, that the only way you can swerve it Swerve someone nowadays is that whatever it is something that's going to annoy them, because it's only when they think they know where it's going, and everybody does. Everybody likes that. They wanted to go there still, which is fine for storytelling. But a lot of things like programs do it too, where they'll just purposely swerve, do something different, just so that they weren't expecting it. But that usually annoys them. So yeah, I think Cody not winning the title falls into that category for me.
See, if you had given me 20 guesses, I wouldn't have thought of that as a swerve. I mean, and I guess that's what makes the topic of swerves very subjective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could have 20 guys sitting here coming up with lists, and maybe like 3 or 4 swerves would be on everybody's list.
Yeah. Is it because it's in a match that you're not too sure if it's a swerve? Because that's how I kind of felt for a different one I've got at first.
I mean, it doesn't matter where you put the swerve. It's not necessarily a storytelling device. I'm not talking necessarily about a promo. I mean, a match result could be a swerve. I mean, if the prevailing sentiment, like you say, is that, okay, it's Cody's time, it's Cody's time, it's Cody's time.
Yeah.
You know, or isn't it? You know.
Exactly. For me, like, it had been set up with the story that it had been telling for a while, and how they've always told stories in the past, how Vince was always telling them. It meant that we were all like, well, obviously Cody's going to win. But the fact that this was Triple H era, obviously that was why it's going differently than we fully expected, because it's a different person at the helm now, and we keep forgetting that, and we're not too sure exactly all the time how much influence Vince still has. So everything was kind of set up for that, and then it went the other way. It just feels like a negative swerve to me.
I mean, I definitely see your point. I'm not here to say that, you couldn't consider that a swerve.
Yeah. Because there's a couple like in matches as well that I could think of, to throw a few out there. Like the Heist of the Century would be another swerve that was in a match.
Okay.
I got another one here somewhere. Where is this? Heist of the Century. Okay, whatever. Yeah.
Another one that just popped into my head, and it was the whole evening was a swerve, was the 1998 Survivor Series, where they had the Deadly Game tournament.
What's that?
The Deadly Game tournament where The Rock.
Oh, was that with the Iron Miner's glove? Was that or?
No. Basically, what was going on was The Rock was set up to be this huge baby face was getting over with the fans big time. And he had these series of matches throughout the night where he beat, how did it go? He beat somebody in the first round because Big Boss Man tried to interfere and threw the nightstick into the ring. Rock caught it, hit somebody with the nightstick, and then got a roll up. Then the next one, there was a count out or something like that. And then he wound up in the final against Mankind.
Right.
And that's where, or The Rock put Mankind in the sharpshooter, one of the worst sharpshooters ever applied to anybody. And
I kind of like the Rock's version.
Shane and Vince called for the bell. And
okay.
Yeah.
They
so that whole night was a swerve to make The Rock the corporate champion.
Oh, was that then? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's an example of an entire scenario series of matches, because all the threats were like eliminated. Like Undertaker and Kane got themselves counted out, double count out in one round. Triple H had to withdraw because of an injury or something like that. Like a knee injury or a pec injury or something like that. I can't remember what. And then everybody else that was in the tournament was kind of like a bit player, like an Al Snow.
Yeah.
Or
so you kind of knew where it was going.
Shamrock, kind of, like they're not really a threat. Like this is, and the semifinals, it was Austin and Mankind, and that's where Shane screwed Austin.
Oh, they had a couple of things out of it then. See, it's a really good tool though, where you can like keep stories going, swerve into other things, like include anything from anywhere, kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say definitely.
What's another bad one you have on your list?
Okay. Yeah, I'd say definitely with that one. No, like I suppose I'd consider the action of actually at the end confirming he was now aligning with the corporation to be the Swerve itself.
Right.
But I hear what you're saying though,
Because
I don't
as the evidence is unfolding, you have no idea. Like it's just it's getting all these victories, and the fans love it and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, see, this is an interesting one actually. Whether you'd consider this a Swerve as well, then this is the one I was thinking of before. Ending the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. That was just the match finish that nobody saw coming.
Only because so much time had passed. I mean, we were talking he was 21-0 at that point.
Yeah.
WrestleMania. And I don't know that, because they didn't even know what they had until 10, 11 years into it. And that's when they started marking it. Right around the time he wrestled Randy Orton at whatever WrestleMania that was when they started making a big deal out of this streak.
Yeah.
I wouldn't consider that a swerve so much as I would consider it a mistake.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's the kind of the thing.
It's just because of the reaction I had to it. I can't believe they did that.
That's kind of like what I was saying though. Like, it kind of feels like to really swerve someone nowadays, or even then, since we've become like smart fans, it's going to result in them also being annoyed by it because it's only things that they're not going to want to happen or don't think should happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, you could, like I said before, you could poll 100 people, and a fraction of them could think that something was a swerve that the rest of them don't. I mean, it's all totally subjective. We've been talking about some things tonight that have been universally regarded as swerves. I don't know that Lesnar beating the Undertaker.
Yeah, it's hard to really.
That's more of a shock.
Yeah.
To me than a swerve.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like the same when it's because I was thinking this before. I think I mentioned it just as well that when it's the match based ones, they kind of fit like the checklist of a swerve, but it doesn't feel like it, does it? So I get it. Okay, let me give one that is indecisive.
Yeah, we'll do one more bad one and one with one good one.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. You have to call this a swerve. The identity of Vince McMahon's son is Hornswoggle. No, definitely a swerve.
I mean, that's trying to make chicken salad out of chicken. You know what? I mean, that's
They never really had a no, because it was supposed to be. It was being set up for Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah.
I mean, then again, no, it wasn't really obvious on telly from what I remember that he was being set up as it. So Hornswoggle, I suppose, was only a swerve though, in the sense that you would have expected anyone better than Hornswoggle to have been it.
Yeah, it's one of those that I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about, to be honest with you. I mean,
is it just a fail, actually, rather than a swerve? Now I say it out loud.
No, I mean, it's a swerve for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, okay.
You didn't see that coming, and we didn't. Because it's like your idea at the tail end of last week's show where you said, let's do a show about all of Vince's bad booking decisions, and that could be like the War and Peace of wrestling with egos. It'd be like 65 episodes, 65 installments.
Yeah, literally going through any negative storyline.
Call the number on the bottom of your screen during our pledge drive, and you'll get bonus content unlocked and all that kind of stuff.
Let us not forget as well, Hornswoggle, though, he is a swerve machine because he was also revealed to be, as another swerve, the general manager on the laptop.
Yes, he was. I mean, I guess they don't think much about that because just the storyline itself was so ridiculous.
Yeah, of course.
Why are you going to waste TV time writing a storyline about your illegitimate kid?
Yeah. let's all agree though. It would have been either way if it was Mr. Kennedy. It would have been better than Jason Jordan and Kurt Angle.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I just have a hard time imagining what they would have done with Kennedy, because he's one of the people I never got. I never cared much for him, even when he was around and healthy and contributing and stuff like that.
I feel like he had that early kind of the same kind of thing that LA Knight's got. Just LA Knight's got more, but that same kind of swagger,
I can see that.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, why don't we round third and head for home with one more example of what you would consider to be a well-executed swerve? Because sadly, I am still having a hard time thinking of any besides my Eric Bischoff one to kick off the show, which I feel bad that I'm not able to contribute more to this discussion.
Oh, no, you could reacting to the ones that I've got written down. That is contributing enough. And as you know, I only pulled these up less than half an hour before we started. So
trade secrets. You don't want to.
Want
to let people too far behind the curtain.
I mean, I'm an exceptionally organized individual. I joke really about what I just said. I'm as organized as a Austrian dictator in Germany. There you go.
You pulled out your 3-hole punch laminated folder about swerves, and you're sharing little chestnuts from that folder as we speak.
I made a mistake with the first 10 minutes, though. I was, as I also said at the beginning, I was researching Swerve Strickland, and then you let me know what the actual breakdown was. I was like, oh, those kind of swerves. My bad. I was still trying to figure out the origins of that weird hat that he wears to the ring, but I'll have to wait for another day in that case.
Cool with the kids, that's all I know.
Yeah, of course. All right, let me give you a positive one then. I'll quickly run through the list of the other ones I've got at the end. But a good one here. Okay, I suppose this would be considered a good one, I'd say. I'd say it wasn't a company that I watched at the time or anything. I've only seen this since it all happened, watching stuff back. Hulk Hogan being revealed as the third member of the NWO.
Yeah, that would be a big time swerve.
Yeah.
I actually, there's an episode in the archives of our show that I did. I think Patrick called it a study hall, as I recall, about the Bash at the Beach, where Hulk Hogan was revealed as the third member of the NWO, and I talked about why it was such a well received, in terms of the fallout and the shock value and everything like that.
Rejuvenated his career and pretty much in one night.
The Cliff's Notes version of it, gang, is here's a guy that you never thought would turn heel.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the whole crux of the argument that Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan and everybody else, was talking about, was the one thing I've never done is really be a heel.
It would have literally been as much of a thing as John Cena suddenly turning heel properly.
And that's why it was so, I mean, you have Gene Okerlund in the ring trying to interview them and getting drenched with, soda pop, and, he got cut on the nose from a battery or whatever, got thrown in the ring, and he's crying.
Oh, wow.
Trying to interview them and stuff like that. And then they were off and running. I mean, and for a while, they were reviled until they were cool, until they were, the anti-hero kind of thing.
Obviously, that was one of those things that they should have realized when to stop it, but that's a whole another conversation.
Yeah. But that, it's one of the best swerves that's ever been done.
You can argue that.
They even had the stones to consider it and then pull it off on top of it all.
Mm-hmm. And it's quite interesting as well, because it spanned, when you look at the build-up for why it was so surprising that it was just done about, it spreads over multiple companies.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, that's, we talk about playing the long game. I mean, that's, if you're going to shoot your shot or play your ace, you got to do it at the right time kind of thing. And that's, Hulk realized that, okay, this is the way for me to rejuvenate my career, as you said. This is the way for me to make some more money, make the company more money, do some box office and things like that. And boy, did they.
Yeah. I mean, just as well, touching on the only one as well that I think is like a recent swerve that you could argue, even though everyone in the arena knew was coming, other than me, God knows how they knew. But RVD popping up in AEW recently, you thought he was like Jerry Lynn that was going to do something. It was how he was putting it. I didn't know he was like had a screwed up neck now, for example, so I didn't realize he couldn't actually wrestle anymore.
I see.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it yet, but I understand that he got a massive reaction.
Yeah,
when he came out, either this week or last week on AEW. So
it just wasn't expected, like for me anyway.
Alert. I said in the pre-show meeting that I wanted to keep this to about 45 minutes, and it looks like we're actually going to come in around that time. So we're not going to run over tonight.
Let me quickly just run through the ones I've got for here then, but I'll just literally go through them, The other good ones, Rollins destroys the Shield.
Okay.
Ending the streak up. Forgot about that. I would have mentioned that. I mean, Andre the Giant ends Hulk Hogan's title reign of 1,400 days and then sells the title to the $1 Million Man.
Oh, yeah. Forgot
That's quite a swerve to me. Bad one, Stone Cold turns heel, joins the corporation at WrestleMania main event. Taker buries Paul Bearer in cement despite winning the match against the Dudleys.
That was stupid.
Yeah. Shane steals WCW from Vince, that whole thing. Finger poke of doom.
Oh, God.
Bash at the beach, lie down and pin with Jeff Jarrett, I believe.
All right. That was 2000.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And then lastly, David Arquette winning the WCW title.
Oh, jeez, David Arquette.
You got to arguably that's definitely a swerve.
Yeah, that was a great place to end it because I don't want to waste any time talking about that one. I mean,
how can you?
Having an actor win your championship, but
not even a beefy one either,
Right. But as ever, Katie and I would like to thank all of you for your support. Thank you for the views and the subscribes and the shares.
Pop.
You can contact the show, wrestlingwithegos@gmail.com. You can always leave a comment here on YouTube or on any of our podcasting platforms. Until next time,
or if you want some more funny random stuff, you can also go to KD Comedy Podcast as well.
Yes, KD Comedy and KD Comedy Podcast, all that good type of stuff.
Just KD Comedy Podcast. We got rid of the ink because who wants that getaway ink?
Who wants
totally independent decision, and wasn't because a other comedian to spite me bought the kdcomedyinc.com website. It definitely wasn't that. I independently got rid of the ink. Yeah.
All right. Thank you as ever. Until next time, when hopefully the entire band will be back together. Thank you for watching. This has been Wrestling with Egos, and discussions like this, Swerve, are why we love pro wrestling.
Wabba dabba doo. Yeah.